we are going to reconvene at 7:49. And now moving on to item 13, presentation and discussion on Clearlake's water providers. City Manager Floor.
Hang on one second. There we go. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. So I'd like to introduce you to Robert Roscoe, who is a consultant with GEI Consultants that's been working with the city for a little while now. And I give brief background on Rob before we turn over to him and have him get started. So he has BS in Civil Engineering from UC Davis, Master's in Civil Engineering from Cal State Sacramento with a dual focus in water resources and water quality. He's a registered professional engineer in California. He's a level T5, the highest level attainable licensed water treatment plant operator. He has 45 years experience in water system engineering, which includes planning, design, and construction management, operations, and executive management for both public and private water systems. He served as vice president and general manager for a private water company with 14 water systems in 5 California counties. Served as general manager at Sacramento's Suburban Water District for 15 years, serving a population of over 175,000. Recent experience with water system organization and consolidation issues in Butte, Mendocino, Sacramento, Placer, and El Dorado counties. He chairs the California Water and Environment Committee for the American Society of Civil Engineers. He has served on the board of directors of the Association of California Water Agencies for 8 years and has been a recipient of a number of statewide awards and recognitions. It could go on for quite some time with Rob's experience and in talking and meeting with a number of water experts in Sacramento and other areas. Everyone knows Rob Roscoe. So with that, I will turn it over to Rob to give a little bit of background.
Thank you, Manager Flora. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present here. I retired from Sacramento Suburban Water District about 5 years ago and then went back into consulting because I love it. I miss it. I've done water for most of my career, and this is the kind of stuff that is kind of, I don't know how I'm going to stop. The topic tonight is water supply in the city of Clearlake, and it's a little unusual in some respects and quite common in other respects. The city, you go to the next slide and we'll move forward here. You got 3 separate water purveyors, and they're all different kinds of animals. The 3 water purveyors are that serve the city, in my opinion, are doing a fine job. What my presentation is about isn't as much what's wrong with the present situation. My presentation, and I hope the message is, what are you missing out on if you did it differently? The 3 water purveyors right now are a public agency, Canocti County Water District, a private mutual water company. It's a private corporation, Highlands Mutual. And then Golden State Water Company is an investor-owned utility, and they one of their service areas in California includes a portion of the city of Clearlake. All of these 3 entities are structured very differently, but all 3, the commonality is they're all regulated by the State Water Resources Control Board. I'll refer to them as the State Board, the State Water Board. But the Division of Drinking Water at the State Board is the one that writes the drinking water supply permits to each one of these. So they are the one of the primary regulatory authorities, and that's common to all 3. Canocti County Water District is a public agency. They have 5 members of the board of directors. They are elected at a general election by all registered voters within the district boundaries, and that elected board of directors appoints a general manager. The general manager of a county water district has broad authority to implement the board's policies and comply with the permit requirements of the State Water Board. The rules that they operate under are very specific for managing public financing and open governance, much like the city. The Ralph M. Brown Act applies. You do things in the public. The money is public. Your records are public. And all your assets are public property. So the water system, the pipes in the street, the pumps, the trucks, the backhoes, the inventory are all public property. Because they're a public water district, subdivision of the state, they are eligible for tax exempt public financing. And the rates that they charge for their services for providing public water are set by the board of directors following a very public process, governed in part, and the major one governing this is Prop 218. Highlands is a mutual water company. They are a private corporation. They have a 5-member board of directors, and those directors are elected at a meeting of the shareholders. And the 5 board of directors appoint a general manager. California corporation law applies. In the case, different rules can be set, but in Highlands' case, my understanding is one parcel is one shareholder and they get one vote. The bylaws are established by the board of directors. The assets, the water system, the pipes and the pumps and the tanks are private property. They're owned by the shareholders of the corporation. The shareholders of this corporation are the people who receive water from the Highlands Mutual Water Company. They have to serve only within their boundaries. They have no access to tax exempt financing, and the rates are set by the board of directors. The third one is Golden State Water Company. Golden State is a name used in California. They are a wholly owned subsidiary of American States Water Company. American States is a private corporation traded on a New York exchange. You can buy stock in American States Water Company. They're under the New York Stock Exchange symbol AWR. The stock has performed better and worse depending on how the market has been doing largely, but they significantly are classified as an investor-owned utility. Golden State itself in California serves a number of connections in 80 different communities. Where you find Golden State largely is in Southern California, where the majority of their customers are. But 80 different communities means they're operating a lot of different small systems. They do a lot of that. And they serve a portion of the city of Clearlake. The local manager here that operates and makes day-to-day decisions on running the water system here reports to a regional manager, Paul Schubert in Rancho Cordova. And the corporate headquarters is in San Dimas, California for Golden State Water Company. San Dimas is in the LA basin. They are governed by corporation laws, but they're also subject to the regulations of the Securities and Exchange Commission, which makes them a private water system a little different than Highlands because their stock is publicly traded. Their assets are private property, and those assets are owned by the stockholders. If you buy stock in American States Water Company, you are a partial owner of all of the assets of American States Water Company. They don't have access to tax exempt financing. They can float private financing. They go to their stockholders and spend stockholder money. And when they do, they earn a rate of return on those capital investments that is set by the Public Utilities Corporation in California. That office is in Sacramento. So every 3 years, there's a general rate case. The PUC sets a schedule for those rate cases so they don't all come up at once. with all the investor owns. But Golden State, there's 18 to 20% of all water customers in California are served by investor-owned water utilities. And there are a number of them, large and small, in the state. Golden State is one of the larger ones, and called an A company, just because of the size. I think over 100,000 is what makes you an A company. And then B companies are a little smaller, all the way down to D-size companies, which are very small, but still investor-owned. So basically, the rates here are set by the PUC. It's a very complicated rate case. I've been through a number of these back in my career when I worked for an investor-owned water utility. And quite complicated. They're almost always adjudicated by an administrative law judge with depositions under oath in front of the judge, from staff to PUC, from the public, if the public chooses to engage, and by the private company. So it's a complicated process. The company does have a profit motive. Not only do they earn a rate of return on all capital investments they make, but they also have to answer to shareholders, and shareholders in publicly traded companies want share prices to go up, and share prices go up when the company makes a lot of money. It's not quite that simple. I'm way oversimplifying. This is where the water companies are right now. This is a map. This was taken from a LAFCO report, and it was before the annexation of Lower Lake County Water District. So my understanding is that's now part of Conocti County Water District. So I didn't put the bold box around that one because that one is now part of Conocti, but the map was showing it. So if somebody had a question of what's the purple, I wanted to identify. These are the three water companies that serve the city of Clear Lakes. And if you go to the next slide, it'll show size of those companies. I got population and connections because those numbers always change, but these numbers come off of the State Water Board website. And I can't tell you when it was last updated. So these numbers might be last week, they might be last year, they might be longer ago than that. But all the numbers came off the same website, so they're all the same point in time, I believe. But here's how it divides up. It's not roughly a third each. Conocti is a little bit smaller. If you this is based on number of connections, not based on population. So that's pretty much all of these are small water districts. You have three small water districts serving a relatively small city. The next series of slides I want to show are also from the State Water Board. They have what they call a dashboard on public water systems throughout the state of California. So literally hundreds of water systems in California are rated on this dashboard. And I wanted to give a little bit of background. There's four main categories: water quality, accessibility. Accessibility is not the common thinking of accessibility. Affordability, and then TMF capacity is technical, managerial, and financial capacity. TMF is a common acronym used by State Water Board. If you are new to try to acquire a water supply permit, you have to demonstrate adequate technical, managerial, and financial capacity to the state that you can operate the thing long-term sustainable manner. So that's a common thing. But the right-hand column and they can change these indicators and how they do their ranking. They did change the affordability one. They dropped two older ones and they put in a new one called household socioeconomic burden. That was just added this year to their dashboard. But you can see, the water quality is standard things. Are there constituents of emerging concern? Do you have sources that have exceeded an MCL, a past presence on the human right to water list? Accessibility talks about really kind of the resilience of it. Do you have a number of sources? If you lost one source, are you still able to serve water at peak times? Are there interties with others that add to resiliency of the water system? are you on the drought and water shortage risk assessment? The Department of Water Resources does a risk assessment of water supplies for the state of California every year. And so the State Water Board has kind of imported how Department of Water Resources has done their risk assessment into their assessment of overall accessibility. Affordability is kind of what you think, percent of median household income. And for the State Water Board, pretty much the entire city of Clearlake is considered severely disadvantaged based on median household income compared to statewide averages. And they're looking at what are extreme water bills. And then they have this new one. And frankly, I haven't dug into this, but household socioeconomic burden is a new one they did this year. And there's a many 100-page manual that describes how they do this. There's got spreadsheets that overburden your laptop computer that they come up with these rules. But TMF capacity is, do you have the right certifications? Are there significant deficiencies? How was your last state inspection? Do you have cash on hand on financial capacity? What's your operating ratio, your net annual income? If you're losing money every year, that's a bad sign. So this is, I want to spend a little minute explaining these four categories: water quality, accessibility, affordability, and TMF capacity. So now I'll show you what the state believes. This is just snapshots from the state website. Conocti County Water District, here's where I got the population and connection numbers. But you can see the pictures at the bottom, water quality, accessibility, affordability, and TMF capacity. So that's just, kind of like your speedometer. This is their dashboard on how they are ranking Conocti County Water District. We can come back to these if they have any questions, but a lot of these, for instance, I already mentioned the household burden percentile. I'm not sure how that's calculated. It's a new one they put in this year. But let's go to the next one, is Highlands. And this is the dashboard for Highlands. Again, this is none of my information. I just took a screenshot from the state board website and put it in a slide. And then if you look at Golden State, they're also here, and that's their dashboard. You'll note that water quality, a little bit of this is, I would want to spend some time diving into how they came up with some rankings, for example. But if we go to the next slide, it puts them all side by side. So here's Conocti, Highlands, and Golden State. These are your three water providers. It's a little unclear to me. I would think that from a water quality standpoint, that you're all getting water out of Clearlake. It's all very difficult water to treat. But Golden State somehow is in the green. The other two are somehow in the orange, yellow, excuse me. Notably, I want to, the accessibility numbers are all there. I think if you just look at these three side by side, you get some idea of them. The ugly column is affordability. If you look at affordability, Conocti is in orange, Highlands is in red, Golden State is in red. And so I wanted to look a little deeper into that. And so I got a copy of charges. I want to qualify some of this before we get into some numbers, but this is for a standard 5/8 inch residential meter for all three. Conocti, I understand, is currently considering a rate study. The rates that are charged here were set quite a while ago by their board in a multi-year rate setting process. And this is the last year of that series of rate increases. So it's time to look in the future and see what needs to happen. So I understand there is a rate study underway. Highlands rates are brand new. The rates I publish here for Highlands are effective June 1st of this year. And then Golden State, my understanding is these are current rates, but they have a PUC application and a general rate case pending in front of the Public Utilities Commission in San Francisco as we speak. I need to put a lot of asterisks under Golden State because I could not find on their website what their monthly service charge is, volume charge, and all the other surcharges. And I asked City Manager Flora, can I get, is there, someone And he sent me a copy of a residential bill, and that provided information for me here. So there was a cross-connection charge of a couple dollars. There was an administrative surcharge of that was different than the volume surcharge. There were other surcharges that accumulated up to a little less than $12 a month. This is a 5/8 inch residential customer. And then the California Public Utilities Commission charges a fee of 0.7% of the total bill. And this is how the state of California helps balance their budget. But that was our May 23rd, 2024 bill. So I think this is relatively current for water. I want to talk about a couple other things. I just picked three numbers on quantity of water because in all cases, nobody in Clearlake is a flat rate customer. Your bill goes up based on the amount of water. So if you use zero water for Canocti and Highlands, you're going to pay a monthly service charge of around $40. Golden State, you would pay $57 plus some surcharges, plus the CPUC fee. So that's probably going to be in the neighborhood of $60 if you were on vacation for the whole month and you had no leaks. And then the volume charges are pretty different for the three purveyors. And that's why the monthly bills are pretty different. I picked 7.7 cubic feet per month because the state average for indoor water use is 48 gallons per capita per day. And for a family of four, that adds up to 7.7 cubic feet per month. So that is indoor only average use statewide in California. The monthly bill column there based on 12.5 cubic feet, 100 cubic feet, 100 cubic feet is 748 gallons. It's an odd number, but English units always have odd stuff. But 1,250 cubic feet a month is roughly an average bill of some irrigation, probably none in the winter, too much, some in the summer, but that might be an average consumption per month for the year. And then I use the 17.3 as perhaps representative of a summer month with lots of outside irrigation. So the indoor water use is if there's no water being used. And again, the indoor use is a statewide average, not any kind of Clearlake average. I didn't base this on any of the average numbers from the three purveyors. These are statewide, just as a representative to show differences in the rates for the three purveyors that are serving the city. The city is considered severely disadvantaged, and frankly, all of those are or would be really high numbers, and certainly the Golden State number is you would want to not use much water outside. You wouldn't want to have a big garden or a big green lawn. Next one maybe. One of the other things you get off the state website is how much grant money have these districts received? And again, I didn't get these numbers from the districts. I got these numbers from the state of California. There could be other federal grants involved. The state doesn't list. I don't know of any. But the amount of outside money, in my past career, I was always called this other people's money. This is not ratepayer money from the people you're serving water to. This is other people's money. This is like you getting gas tax money. This is planning and construction and technical assistance grant money from the state of California. The other thing I want to qualify here is I'm not in touch because this is just off a state website on how much these three water systems have received. I don't know if this is grants awarded or actual payments made under those grants. So in the case of Canocti, they may have cashed checks from the state in the since 2017 to the tune of $10 million. And they may have another 5 or some other number of grants that have been awarded that they haven't billed the state and received payment on. So I don't know whether this is total grants received or total payments made, which could be different. I can tell you in the state of California, in the last 7 years, there have been a number of bond issues and a number of state programs that have provided grant funding for water systems, in particular, severely disadvantaged water systems, and in particular, small water systems, in particular, systems with water quality violations. Small water systems are eligible for this. The eligibility list talks about water quality issues, but there's enough of those in the state that that's pretty much where things end for the highest priority. That top tier 1 is reserved pretty much for those who have continuing water quality violations. And there's enough of them in the state that it takes a lot of money to fix those. A few years ago, our Assembly and Senate and the governor signed a bill for the human right to water. And that was the backstop for a lot of this funding that is now available. But if you look at the next slide, I just highlighted these numbers. Canocti, I think, has done a really wonderful job getting outside money. They are a public agency. Golden State doesn't have much incentive to get grant money because they just have admin costs and they've got to keep better records on certified payrolls and what they spent the money on to get a grant reimbursement. You spend your money, then they reimburse you. Golden State has stockholders that give them money when they buy stock, and they spend that money and earn an 8% rate of return on their capital investment. So the money that comes from the state by way of a grant is not money that they earn an 8% rate of return on. But one of the things I want to make here is that $10 million has gone a long ways toward, I mean, to me, that's other people's money. That's money that you've used to fix your system, to upgrade your system, to replace old infrastructure that didn't come from your ratepayers. And that could be one of the factors on why Canocti's rates are lower than the other two. So I just wanted to spend some time, and these are my opinions on the principal issues with such a disjointed water service. And again, I want to make the point that I don't want to disparage the efforts being done now to serve good drinking water at the lowest price possible to the customers here. It's a tough job. The water you start with out of Clearlake is tough to treat. It takes lots of different treatment processes to make it as good as it is. This is your local water I've been drinking this afternoon, and I trust it. Right now, the principal issues, as I see, you've got this disjointed water system. You've got 3 water purveyors that are all doing their planning for their system, not for the city. They're looking within their boundaries for their planning. They're not planning outside their boundaries. They don't have a reason to. Mutual Water Company is representing their shareholders, excuse me. The investor owned, again, is just representing their shareholders, and even the public county water agency, Canocti, does their planning for their service area. Now, it doesn't mean they're not talking with their neighbors. It doesn't mean they're not building interconnections and interties. But if it was all operated as one system, there would be a lot more interties, a lot more flexibility in how to run, a lot more resiliency. And if one plant goes down, you don't have a third of the city out of water. You could put emergency rationing in place and probably still keep everybody, all the mains pressurized. But going down the list, principal issues, I think, are the overlap and underlap of service areas. You saw on the map that we showed there's a lot of overlapping areas. There's some vacant white space in the middle of things. Golden State has a major service area, but then they've got this little connecting line where the pipe connects another little service area. It's very disjointed. There's duplication of assets and resources. And with three purveyors, it's tripled. So you got three offices, you got three managers, you got three treatment plants, you got, three separate distribution systems that are not well interconnected. They're not to say there are no interconnections, but they're not interconnected like a single common system would be. There's a lack of coordination on capital planning and capital projects. You saw all the work that the city has done in the last 7 years in the previous presentation, and I was quite impressed with how far you guys have come on roadwork projects. In my experience working in civil engineering for a long time, public comments on potholes are everywhere. And I'm guessing you guys get your fair share of those. But looking at how much work has been done as a percent of the total miles, I was quite impressed. The problem here is you put new pavement down and then there's a leak because the main's old, and then the water company has to come in and trench up your new pavement. That, you want to plan projects to the extent you can. I'm not saying no planning is going on, but the coin has another side there too. You got a water company who has to replace a main, and they go in and replace a main, and the street isn't due for pavement for a while, but you got to put the pavement back over the trench. You got to do some fixing there, and then so that costs money. And then the city comes in, and if you could coordinate that work, you get both of them done cheaper. There's money to be saved. It's like an opportunity missed. There are a lack of economies of scale. You got three small water systems. It's like if you buy things in bulk, you get them at a cheaper rate. You just saw that in the bids you got on your asphalt work for the road work. Bigger project, you get good prices. If that was split up into little tiny projects, per mile, it'd be a lot more expensive. And then limited staff, and I don't mean this to be pejorative, but I've worked with small water systems, and when you have to serve, 1,500 to 2,000 customers with, 5, 6, 8 staff, each staff person has to do a bit of everything. When I was with an investor-owned utility, and we had small systems in Santa Cruz and San Mateo and Sonoma counties, I'd have the local general manager call me up and say, "We got to get this done. I got nobody to do it." And I said, "Well, you're wearing that hat then. You got to do a little bit of everything." And if you had a larger organization with more staff, those staff have an opportunity to become more specialized. You need a safety officer. You don't need 3. You need one expert in environmental compliance and water quality, not one in each district. So there's the treating drinking water to current standards is not an easy job. The 3 purveyors you have right now, none of them are out of compliance with drinking water regulations. There are no enforcement actions pending as we sit here today. There have been some in the past. But as we sit here today, all 3 water purveyors, there's no enforcement order pending against any of them. And they have a tough job to do. This is not easy work. And maintaining 24/7 system to serve water, because every customer, when they go to turn on a tap, wants water to be there and wants it to be at the right pressure. They want the fire hydrants to work. They want, no excuses. This is drinking water. This is important stuff. And then I just think there's significant duplication of staff roles and responsibilities. And the easy one is you have 3 local bosses. If it was one system, you'd have 1 local boss. Now, you get down below the main local boss, and you still have to run the system. You still have all of those mains to deal with meters and service lines and leaks in the mains and dealing with regular operation and maintenance of the treatment plants. I don't see joining this as being any kind of immediate change in total staff. There could be some efficiencies over time with but it would take a period of time to figure that out. And in past mergers of water districts, and I've been involved in public and private ones, that has almost always happened through attrition. So, in general, nobody loses their job, with the exception of the one person under a contract. And if your general manager is under a contract, there's usually only one boss needed when you're all done with a merger. That doesn't mean the other bosses don't have jobs. There's a lot of institutional knowledge that you don't want to lose. People who've been doing this stuff for a long time know where everything is, and they know how things work, and they know how to fix things that break. You don't want to lose that. So let's go to some potential benefits of consolidation. Certainly improve capital project coordination. The planning that's done now for water system planning is done. There's 3 separate plans done for 3 different areas of your city. There's no one plan done for water supply for the entire city. Nobody's doing that. For non-public entities, there would be improved access to grants and low interest loans. Public entities have that access now, and you've seen that Canocti has been successful in pursuing other people's money. There's improved system resilience and emergency response capabilities. It's not uncommon for a small water system to lose the licenses that are required, because Clearlake water is difficult to treat, and the types of treatment processes you have. I believe all 3 water systems require a T4 treatment license. That's a very high level of specialty licensing. There aren't that many folks around that hold those licenses. So for small systems, if you have your main licensed operator get hit by a Mack truck walking across the road and you don't have a license, that's a problem. If you're a bigger system and you got 3 of those licenses, it's not as much a problem. I don't mean to be gory about this, but I usually use hit by a truck or hit by a bus. But that's, you have additional resiliency. You've got a larger staff. If somebody's on vacation, you got somebody else who can step up and take care of that. You don't have to put off things till they get back from vacation. There's certainly improved system resiliency. Again, and I'll bring up the situation of fire flows. I looked at a list of fire test results on a number of hydrants scattered around the city of Clearlake. All 3 water systems were involved with that. Some of the results seem fine. Some of them didn't quite seem so fine. But that, I got to tell you, that's not uncommon with a small system that was built a long time ago. Standards have changed. So putting mains in the ground 50 years ago, it probably wasn't a very big main. And it probably doesn't provide the fire flow that you would expect today. But with combining, you can use a storage altogether. You don't have to have fire flow storage in 3 separate systems. You've got Highlands with more storage than the other 2. But if they're operated all together, you would have more. If a plant went down, you'd have more in storage. If a big fire happened, you'd have more ability to respond. If the system was well interconnected, operated as a single unit. And that's my point here, with modest investments in system interconnections, pressure sustaining valves, pressure reducing valves, pressure zone modeling, and maybe changing some pressure zones. If it was all operated as a single system, I think for modest additional investment, you could have some significant improvements in fire flows and fire duration. Because firefighting is a combination of how much flow comes out of the hydrant and how long will that flow be sustained. And I think by combining assets, you could, I'm not saying you're going to solve all problems to meet today's standards without additional main replacements, because that last 4-inch main that feeds a hydrant or a 6-inch main, it still might be the limiting factor. But in my opinion, I think you could go a long ways to improving fire flows by operating those 3 systems as if they were a single system. I think you get reduced duplication of equipment and facilities. You got 3 offices, you need 1. You got dump trucks and backhoes and other equipment, that could be shared. You got inventories. When you combine inventories, when you do a consolidation of different districts, sometimes you don't see the immediate benefits of that, but certainly over time, you're going to see a lot of benefits. A lot of times, somebody will be using different types of hydrants, Mueller hydrant, Clow hydrant, different types of valves, different types of pipe and repair clamp. And so you're not going to necessarily get rid of everything all at once and combine everything the same. You could have some differences, but I think before you would consider doing anything, you'd have to have a look into where would those cost savings come from. I think obviously you get some economies of scale, and I think you'd have more staffing options and you'd have more staff opportunities. In a bigger organization, there's more places for entry-level staff to move up. And there's more opportunity for specialization. And so I just think those are some benefits. And then if we go to the next slide, I think there are some continuing concerns. And again, I want to point out, none of these water purveyors are on any enforcement actions by the State Water Board right now. And I want to make the point again, I've said it, and I got another slide, I want to point it out again. Clearlake water is not easy to treat. And all 3 purveyors heavily rely on Clearlake as a primary source. If something happens in Clearlake, if there's a fuel spill, if there's something with the lake, if there's a new maximum contaminant level for a raw water constituent that's close, and all of a sudden it flunks, all 3 purveyors have to respond to that. So there is source risk, it's difficult to treat, and that imposes risks of treatment upsets. The types of treatment processes that are operated to maintain drinking water standards in the city of Clearlake are complicated. Highlands did have an exceedance of primary drinking water standards for haloacetic acids in the past 5 years. Haloacetic acids are relatively newly regulated, last decade or so. They're one of the 2 principal components in disinfection byproducts. The other ones are trihalomethanes. But essentially, when you have organic material that's not removed in treatment and you hit it with a disinfectant like chlorine, chlorine is a halogen. It reacts with organic molecules and takes the place of some of the hydrogen bonds on those organic molecules. And a lot of times when you add chlorine or bromine to these relatively short organic chains that are relatively easy to get through treatment processes, you form trihalomethanes or haloacetic acids. They're lumped together so that the limits on trihalomethanes are 80 parts per billion. Billion is a huge number. So 1 part per billion parts is a tiny number. But 80 parts per billion is the limit for trihalomethanes. 60 parts per billion is the limit for haloacetic acids. Trihalomethanes, there are 4 principal species of those. Haloacetic acids, the one that Highlands had some issues with, there's 5 principal ones: mono, di, and tri, chloroacetic acid, and then mono and di bromoacetic acids. Those are the 5 principal species. You add them all up, the concentrations together, all together, they have to be under 60. The other thing about trihalomethanes and haloacetic acids, not just they're relatively newly regulated, and certainly within my career, but they also continue to form after you chlorinate. So if there's any trace organic material in the water, how long and the state requires that they mandate that you keep a disinfectant residual concentration all the way out to the distal end of your distribution system. So how long has that water been in your distribution system, has had time to react with that, whatever little trace concentrations of organics might still be in the water? So concentrations of these constituents can climb over time. So the water age makes a difference. And so if you have long dead end water lines and the customers at the end of that long dead end water line went on vacation for the summer, and that happened to be one of your sampling points, that would be an area of concern. The water age tends to elevate concentrations of these constituents. The way to avoid it is get all the organics out, and a lot of people have to go to some different method of disinfection. But that gets really complicated too. You've got a lot of organic material in your raw water. And that's, well, let me finish this slide. I was going to jump to the next one. I'm out of order here. I think there are continuing concerns still with fire flow shortcomings existing in all three systems. A lot of that has to do with the age of the system and when they were put in the ground. Fire flow standards certainly have changed over time. But in California, wildfire and the ability of insurance companies that are leaving the state to continue to offer fire insurance policies means those ISO ratings on the water systems are very important for your customers' ability to get insurance. I know I personally have lost insurance on a rural property I own. They won't insure it anymore. I can go to the state and they want over $1,000 a month for insurance with a $20,000 deductible, and that doesn't cover anything inside the building. So much of the existing infrastructure, I mean, Clearlake's not a new community. A lot of this stuff is old and it's reaching the end of its useful life. And this is one of my big concerns for the DA is I haven't seen asset management plans that look at, here's the material, this kind of pipe material is expected to last 50 years. It's already 60 years old. We're already getting a leak history climbing. We're already, replacing infrastructure for this is very expensive. The inflation on water system components has outpaced general inflation numbers significantly. In Sacramento, 5 years ago, I was paying about 1.1 million a mile for 8-inch mains and residential streets, including the new pavement on top. It's 1.6 million a mile 5 years later. That's way above standard inflation numbers. A lot of the chemicals used in treatment prices have gone up faster than inflation. A lot of materials, steel prices, concrete prices for if you're going to replace treatment plant components have all risen faster than standard inflation. So if you just say, here's how much I'm going to invest and I'm going to use a standard inflation number for it, you're going to run short of money. I think there's, again, I mentioned the lack of coordinated infrastructure planning. It hinders orderly community development. You got 3 water systems that are planning for their own customers. They're not planning, I'm confident that they're doing a good job looking at your general plans and your future plans and the city's specific plans, but only within their area, not necessarily citywide. There's nobody looking out for water supply citywide. I do think there's a number of missed opportunities. I think there's you're missing opportunities to improve system reliability and emergency response. You're missing opportunities to access what are available monies now that may not be available in 10 years. The state is in a budget crunch and they're releasing less of their bond money this year because of the debt service payments. You saw the governor's May revised. Wasn't pretty, but there's still money available that hasn't been available in the past for systems, and a disadvantaged community puts you higher on those lists. Doesn't necessarily put you in the fundable category, but it puts you above communities that aren't severely disadvantaged. So, and then I think you're missing long-term cost savings through, the reductions in redundancies. And with that, I want to make one other point, I guess, about treatment of Clearlake water. This is not for the weak. The raw water quality can change rapidly. This is the famous photo that made the New York press just last month. Optimizing treatment protocols as the water quality changes, and you've got to stay on top of that. And that means the fact that you've got none of your water purveyors under any enforcement orders right now is really good news. That means these guys are doing a good job treating with the small crews that they have and serving water that is today meeting all drinking water standards. I do think there are risks, and cyanotoxins associated with these blooms are one of those. Cyanobacteria account for a large percentage of that green color, and those small little microorganisms release microcystin toxin and 2 or 3 other ones that are 20, 30 letters and 8 syllables long. But there is an increased risk with this higher organic loading of failing health standards for the products, the disinfection byproducts I was mentioning. This is organic material in the lake that is difficult to remove and poses additional risks to flunking drinking water standards. And I'd like to give credit to the 3 purveyors that you have right now for doing the job they've been doing. I just think, and I started my discussion here, I don't think this is as much about anything they're doing really wrong. It's not the best for the city of Clearlake. There are opportunities missed, and I think that's what a lot of this is about. So I do have a couple recommendations. There's an ability, you guys should be continuing to work with the purveyors. Coordinate your capital projects. I understand that that Highlands is doing some pipe projects ahead of your pavement projects. That's excellent. That needs to continue, and it can go the other way too. It's like, hey, maybe the same contractor rebuilding your street can put the pipe in. And you can go to the bid documents and say, okay, here's my share of that project and the city share of that project. You wouldn't have to be doing that if the city operated a city water department and all the system was under the city control, because you'd be doing it already. But I think you should certainly continue to work with the existing purveyors on this. Continue to work with the state board on water quality concerns and funding opportunities. Continue to work with the existing purveyors to obtain information on our policies, procedures, finance and accounting practices. You got 2 private corporations serving the city, and public access laws don't necessarily apply. But it would certainly be nice to have a hydraulic model of the whole system as one, not a hydraulic model of Highland system and a separate model of Canocti system and a separate model. It'd be really nice to say, boy, if we ran this all at once, all together as a single unit, how would we do that? And how do we get the best bang for our buck on where should those improvements go? And then I really think, as a city, you need to continue to investigate options for leveraging opportunities for these improved municipal planning, stabilizing customer rates, and improve long-term resilience of the water supply. And that may include potential system acquisitions and consolidations. So I think there's opportunities here. I think you should continue looking into this.